For decades, Barry Gibb has been a household name because to his iconic singing voice and classic songs. His wife Linda Gray, though, has been a rock through all of his success. Even though they've kept their personal lives under wraps for a long time, Barry is now revealing the truth. Come along as we learn the hidden history of Barry Gibb, the guy whose life was irrevocably altered by the woman he met, and his modest origins. The tiny island between Ireland and England, Douglas, was the site of Barry Gibb's birth on September 1, 1946. He was born in Jane Crookall Maternity Home, and his full name is Barry Allen Crompton Gibb. Music had always played an important role in Barry's life, and he set out at a young age to become one of the most famous artists of all time. As a child, Barry heard music everywhere. The Gibb family originally hails from Manchester, England. Hugh and Barbara Gibb were his parents. Leslie Evans was the firstborn of Barry and his family's sisters. Barry was the second-born. Ancestry from Scotland, Ireland, and England was abundant in the Gibbs family tree. His mother's family came from both England and Ireland, and his father, Hugh, was born in Scotland. Before Barry was born, the Gibbs family relocated to the Isle of Man. They stayed there for a while before returning to Manchester. The family's love of music and their tight-knit bond helped them get through the tough times. Hugh Gibb, Barry's father, was a drummer, and as a result, Barry inherited his passion for music. As a small boy, Barry would frequently accompany Hugh to see his performances at the Douglas hotels. He felt a fire ignite inside after witnessing his father's love of music. The power of music to evoke emotion and movement captivated Barry. He had an innate affinity for music when he was a little boy. Among Barry's relatives, there was more than one gifted musician. A few years down the road, he had twin younger brothers named Robin and Maurice. They would later become the renowned Bee Gees. Their father was a huge encouragement for them to pursue music as a career. The Crompton middle name adds significance to Barry's entire name in his family. A distant relative, Sir Samuel Crompton, was well known for his work in the textile industry, and this distinction was bestowed upon him. His name carried a feeling of pride and heritage, even though Barry didn't follow in those footsteps. Interesting fact about Barry's name: Alan was given to him as a middle name in remembrance of his father's younger brother, who died when he was young. What this demonstrates is the profound significance of family history to Barry's parents and the importance they placed on their loved ones. Barry has always had a passion for music, even as a little boy. He seemed uninterested in the typical things that children his age do, such as playing with toys. He preferred to be surrounded by music and instruments. He began singing and tinkering with music when he was just a tiny boy. It was Barry's favorite pastime to sing along with records. The moment they saw his skill, his parents pushed him to pursue it. He grew up with music playing in the background, so it was natural for him to do. It was always obvious that Barry loved music, but an injury when he was a kid could have changed that. What followed is worth examining. His formative years were altered by an accident. An accident that changed Barry Gibb's life happened when he was only 2 years old. His body was severely burned when he inadvertently drew a teapot full of boiling water over himself. His injuries were so severe that medical personnel had to hurry him to the hospital. The gruesome injuries required nearly 3 months of hospitalization for Barry's recovery. This was a terrible experience for someone so young. The length of time he spent, apart from his loved ones, was a hardship. However, his sister Leslie and parents did all in their might to back him up. Particularly loving was his mother Barbara, who never left his side. At this period, medical professionals exerted great effort to cure his burns and forestall infections. Barry had a sluggish and difficult recovery since medical treatments were not as sophisticated as they are now. In the 1940s, amazing strength was evident in him even at a young age. The effects of this accident on Barry and his loved ones were long-lasting. The trauma and anguish that Barry felt as a child carried with him into adulthood. Being one of his first memories, it had a profound impact on how he perceived life, suffering, and perseverance. Transferring to Manchester. To Douglas, the capital of the Isle of Man, the Gibb family relocated to 50 St. Catherine's Drive in 1949, when Barry Gibb was just 3 years old. For the family, this was a moment of great joy. December of that year saw the birth of Barry's younger twin brothers, Robin and Maurice. Their presence brought even more energy to the household, and Barry soon assumed the responsibilities of an elder brother. Hugh and Barbara Gibb were often on the go in Douglas with their 3 young children, including Barry. Hugh was the band leader and drummer, so he typically played music, while Barbara took care of the kids. Due to his father's influence, music has always played a significant role in Barry's life. Several moves were made by the family as Barry was growing up. During his early years, Barry went to a variety of schools due to his family's many moves. Braden Tynwald Street Infant and Desmond Road Boys schools were his initial educational stops. Barry was a lively and inquisitive young man, but he preferred music to school. He realized how much he loved performing and singing during these years. His interest in music blossomed from an early age, and he took pleasure in performing for audiences of all ages. Barry Gibb's family relocated to Manchester, England in 1955, when he was 9 years old. A major turning point in Barry's life had occurred. The whole family had to adjust to life in Manchester, a large industrial metropolis, after leaving the smaller and tranquil Isle of Man. Manchester was a dynamic metropolis, teeming with possibilities and obstacles. In Chorlton's working-class Keppel Road, the Gibb family made their home. Barry had no idea what to expect from life here. The streets were more crowded, the people were more varied, and there was more vitality in the air. Despite the challenges, Barry's musical career was greatly aided by his relocation to Manchester. There was a thriving music scene in the city, and Barry was exposed to many different styles of music. Barry and his brothers started taking their musical experiments seriously about this time. They would harmonize musically, quite frequently emulating the styles of wildly popular musicians from that era. While working on his voice, Barry picked up the guitar. The influence of the rapidly growing rock and roll music scene in the 1950s was also felt by Barry in Manchester. The music of legendary performers like Buddy Holly and Elvis Presley captivated him. He understood that listening to music wasn't merely a recreational activity. One day it might be a full-time job. Barry was rapidly developing a passion for music. However, how did he and his siblings initially begin performing? We will discover their debut performance with the Rattlesnakes. The Gibb twins, Barry, Robin, and Maurice, were becoming increasingly enthusiastic about music by 1957. They decided to become a band after being influenced by the rock and roll era and the popularity of skiffle. Their group was known as the Rattlesnakes. The Gibb brothers weren't the only ones in the gang. Kenny Horrocks and Paul Frost, 2 of their buddies, also came up. As lead singer and guitarist, Barry was joined by Robin and Maurice on harmonies. The Gibb brothers' innate musical ability was on display from an early age. Skiffle was a huge hit in the United Kingdom in the 50s. A fusion of jazz, blues, and folk, it was an intensely active musical style. John Lennon and Paul McCartney of the Beatles were among many young musicians who got their start playing skiffle. Using acoustic guitars, homemade basses, and basic drums, the sound attracted rattlesnakes. They put in countless hours of practice, both at home and on Manchester streets, and their self-assurance grew as they went. As early as December 1957, the Rattlesnakes were prepared to make their public performance debut. They intended to lip-sync to a pre-recorded song during a Christmas event at the Gaumont Cinema in their hometown, but the record they were going to utilize broke right before their performance. So much for their ability to act like they were singing along. They could have walked away, or they could have performed live. They chose to push through their fears and do it anyhow. Barry took the lead on guitar, while Robin and Maurice added harmony. Paul and Kenny laid down the beat. Their debut performance was in front of a live audience. Something miraculous transpired, despite their initial apprehension. Their performance was a huge hit with the crowd. Performing live with all that enthusiasm was way more thrilling than merely singing along with a record. They gained a great deal of self-assurance from this surprising event. They had an epiphany. They could play music, sing, and wow an audience. Above all else, they experienced the exhilaration of performing live, an emotion they would never be able to shake. What changed for the Rattlesnakes to become the renowned Bee Gees? They were only starting out. We will discover. When the Bee Gees were born, the Gibb twins Barry, Robin, and Maurice were all prepared for a new beginning by 1958. The Rattlesnakes, the Gibb brothers,